Well, welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm Lindsay Ganong. I'm Co-Executive Director at AERO, and we're glad that you could all be here.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hello everyone remote. This is a fun experience. I don't think that we've ever done something collaborative like this where we have in-person and webinar. So this is exciting. My name is McKenna Sellers. I work as staff for Northern Plains Resource Council. And I'm also going to pass around a sign-in sheet for those who are here, if you wouldn't mind passing that around. And for those who are registered online, you're good. You don't have to do a sign-in sheet.
And I'm Brian Fady. I'm the Clean Energy Program Director at the Montana Environmental Information Center. And thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you for everybody on the live stream. Looks, we got about 10, 15 people on there. And there might be more, actually, now. So, yeah. And so folks know this is being recorded this evening. So there'll be a record of it. And we can use it to do additional trainings in the future. But if you say anything in the room, there's a chance that the microphone might pick it up. If you're toward the back, less likely, but just so you know, the possibility is there.
And for you on the webinar, for any questions out in the room, we'll try to repeat it into the microphone on the computer so that you can keep up with what's happening live. I'll just check the chat box one more time and then we can get rolling. All right, no messages. Excellent.
Cool. Well, we're going to get started here. Hold on. Okay, there it goes. Well, thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Yes, web attendees, you are muted to prevent background noise. And if you have questions in the live stream, just type them into the box and we will check that periodically. Tonight's agenda, we are doing a crash course on what is called the NorthWestern Energy Energy Supply Resource Procurement Plan. The Resource Procurement Plan, or just called the Resource Plan. I'm going to kick us off here with about 15 to 20 minutes of some information, some background on what is NorthWestern, what is a little bit about the Public Service Commission, the body that regulates them, and then, of course, what is this thing, the Resource Procurement Plan? And we'll get into both generally what is a resource plan, and then specifically what's in NorthWestern's plan. Ultimately, what drove us to have this event is that next week there's an opportunity to give public comment at the Public Service Commission right here in Helena on December 9th. So Monday, December 9th at 1:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. The commission is going to be taking public comments at their offices here, 1701 Prospect Avenue. And there's additional opportunities to comment. You can comment online as well. But we really want to make sure that people had a chance to learn about what this plan is, what its impact is, what its importance is, so that if you would like to give comment next week at the commission, that you feel confident about what's going on here. After I do a little bit about info, McKenna and Roxa are going to do a bit about the Public Service Commission as well. Who are they? And what is the public comment process like? If you show up on Monday, what will it look like in the room, and what are sort of expectations about how to give public comment? So we'll walk through that. And then we'll also do a little practice of writing out some comments that people might want to give, and do a little practice and a little workshopping in the room. So, and then we'll talk about the plans for Monday, December 9th, walk through the day. There's going to be buses actually coming from other locations, Missoula, Bozeman, Billings as well, and potentially Great Falls. I haven't heard about that definitively yet, but possibly Great Falls, bringing people in for this comment period next Monday. So we're talking about the NorthWestern Energy Resource Procurement Plan. I wanted to start with, again, a quick bit about NorthWestern. I'd like to start, why are we here? Why do we have to be here on this evening? We could be out doing other things, spending time with friends and family. And I think the answer to that is, unfortunately, because recently NorthWestern Energy has not been like other utilities around the country and even around the region. So other utilities around the country are actually leading the way toward the clean energy transition. And I've got a couple of examples up here, just from this region, just from the kind of the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, Mountain West. Idaho Power here in the upper left is the largest utility in Idaho. It's an investor-owned utility, just like NorthWestern. Earlier this year, it committed itself to getting to 100% clean energy by 2045. And that wasn't a state law that required it. They did it because they thought it was good for their customers and good for the climate. Avista, in the middle there, this is a utility that serves the Spokane area, has an ownership stake in Colstrip. It also self-committed to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045. It did that earlier this year. You got another one down here, Portland General Electric, another big utility in the region. It's moving away from coal. It's signing contracts for new wind and solar energy projects. You got another one down here, PacifiCorp. This is a large company that serves multiple states, millions of customers, Utah, Oregon, Wyoming. It is also producing one of these resource plans. And it's finding in its plan that it wants to move away from coal and move on to clean energy because it's going to save their customers money, is their main point there. These are just a few utilities in the region, but this is replicating all around the country where you have utilities that are similar to NorthWestern that are leading the way to the clean energy future. And I think it's unfortunate because we'll get into the plan, but NorthWestern, if you've been reading the newspapers anytime over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe more, they truly have been an opponent to the clean energy transition. So they have been fighting against rooftop solar. They've been trying to put on new fees to those customers and change the policies around that. You may have seen that they just got rejected on that at the Public Service Commission. The company has been fighting large-scale renewable energy projects as well. And then it has been trying to make its customers take on more of the Colstrip coal-fired power plant. They ran a big couple of bills through the legislative session earlier this year, trying to force the customers to take on more dirty coal energy and expensive coal energy. And that's just a few examples, but in many other ways, the company just has not been going toward clean energy. In fact, it's been going toward fossil fuels. And that's what this plan that they put out is trying to advance. Now, I do want to be a little positive. Oh,
I don't know if this is a good time for a question, but why?
That's a great question. We're going to touch on that in a second here.
Okay, good.
The question was, why have they been like this?
Like, what's their motivation? I mean,
yeah. We'll get to that in 1 second. The positive note here, I do think, is that NorthWestern can be a leader in the clean energy revolution and in the climate fight. Utilities around the country, others are starting to do this, and there's no reason NorthWestern couldn't either. I think it's arguable that right now there's a vacuum of leadership in the state around climate change. The federal government certainly isn't doing anything. They're trying to take us backwards. The state government has also been trying to take us backwards. And the door is open for somebody to bring us forward into the clean energy future. And there's no reason NorthWestern couldn't be. A bit about the company and speaking to their motivations. One big thing you have to remember with NorthWestern is this top point here in the yellow. It is a for-profit company. And it has a South Dakota headquarters, actually. So it has the same motivations as any for-profit company. It has a stock price. It has shareholders. It has to report to investors every quarter about how much revenue it made that quarter and how much revenue it's going to try to earn for its investors going forward. All of that revenue comes from us, the ratepayers, the residents and businesses that pay NorthWestern. And it comes, speaking to the motivation, the company is looking to make a profit and it's looking to make revenue, just as any other for-profit company does. And this isn't unique to NorthWestern. There are plenty of very large for-profit utilities. All of the utilities that I put up there previously with some examples, those are also for-profit utilities, unless it's an electric co-op. It has that same motivation. Real quick, middle point here, big dynamic. It's a state-protected monopoly. NorthWestern has no competition to serve you as a customer here in Helena or anywhere else in the state within its service territory. And there's a trade-off going on there. the state government is saying, okay, utility, we will protect your monopoly and not allow others to serve customers. But in exchange, we get a lot of regulation over you. In fact, we even get to say how much money you make. That's what the Public Service Commission does. They decide how much money is this company going to make. And there's a trade-off happening there. And it does mean that we as individuals, as customers, or as citizens, we have a lot of say in this entire process and with the company. Bottom point here, again, speaking to their motivation, the basic business model of a for-profit utility is a cost-plus model. You add up however much it costs to serve electricity, and then you take those total costs and you add about 10% as a profit margin. Usually somewhere between 8 and 12%, the Public Service Commission decides, but you add a profit margin on top of however much it costs to serve electricity. Now, there's certainly a lot of nuance to it, but at a very simplified level, that's what the business model is. So if you have a cost-plus model and you're a for-profit business, you're going to look for things that are more expensive because that's going to increase your revenue and increase your profit margin. And I think that's a lot of what's motivating NorthWestern these days, and particularly with this resource plan.
So they don't care what it costs as long as they get their 8 to 12% profit.
Yeah. So what is the Resource Procurement Plan, what we're talking about here? These are, it's a standard practice for utilities around the country to produce these plans. They are 20-year look-aheads using computer modeling software to figure out a few things. You know, how much energy will the company need to provide for its customers? What times of year? You're looking at what are the costs and abilities of different power plants to meet the needs of the company to serve its customers. What are the costs and abilities of a wind facility, a solar facility, a gas, coal, hydro? You produce usually it's every 2 years. NorthWestern produces these going forward every 3 years. They will produce these. So this is the 2019 plan that we're talking about, and the next one will come out in 2022. 20-year look ahead, you see how much energy you're going to need. You model, kind of second to the last here, you model different scenarios that the utility could face in the future in order to figure out what decisions should you make today that make sense given those different possible futures. You know, it's a big decision when you build a new power plant. It can be hundreds of millions of dollars, and the plant will be designed to run for 20, maybe 30 years. So when you decide to build one, you want to make sure that it fits well with the future that the utility is likely to face. And you can't predict everything about the future, but a process like this to create this plan helps you look out and see into the future, you know, what sort of risks are there? How is the energy world changing? Is there going to be a lot of population growth, say, in Montana in the next 20 years, so that drives a lot of energy demand? These sorts of things. And again, it's all done in a computer modeling system. NorthWestern controls this computer modeling system. They guard it very closely. They don't like others to see precisely what information they're feeding into the computer, so that, you know, we see the outputs, we see the final product, the plan, but they guard closely what they're actually putting into the computer for its inputs. Things like, you know, what is the cost that they're using for natural gas plants? And what are the assumptions they're using about how much energy can they import from other parts of the region, say from the north to the west to the south, imported into Montana. It's very important what those inputs are, and we don't often get to look at them.
Is that not public information?
Some of it is. Some of it the company considers confidential or proprietary, or access to the software tool itself is considered proprietary. So you're not able to get that.
Does the PSC have the right to ask for that information for their use?
That's a good question.
Yes.
What's that?
They might not hear what the
Oh, sorry. So the question was, does the PSC have the right to ask for that information? To some degree. There's some level of confidentiality around business practices that's probably reasonable, but at the end of the day, the commission has wide-ranging powers to protect the public. And I think it's more likely than not that the commission could get more information from the company than is currently being disclosed.
Proprietary arguments really only arise in where there's competition. If they have a monopoly, the whole proprietary argument, I'm not.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it was said in the room that you know, because there's no competition, the proprietary argument shouldn't hold water here. Yes, to some degree, I think that's true. I think to some degree there is a little bit of information that wants to be kept. Like the company requested bids from developers last year in a request for information process, and developers bid in this. It wasn't to ultimately get a contract, it was truly just sort of information finding. And NorthWestern requested that some of those bids be redacted when the plan was issued. And that was, I think, mostly because you do have to tell developers when they're bidding in, like, if you want confidentiality here, we will try to get it for you so that the developers feel like they can honestly bid in their information. So there's a give and take there, but certainly the company tries to hide information when it can. So they produced this plan, and it's very important for a number of reasons, but in particular, to get approval for a new power plant. We outline here the basic three-step process. This is general for any utility looking to build a new power plant. They often create these 20-year plans, starting on the left, and you identify your future energy need. And this is where we are. The company has created the plan. You move forward, you issue what's called a request for proposals from developers to bid in projects that can meet that demand. You get those bids, you analyze them. It's a very, again, internal process within the company. And then you seek approval from the Public Service Commission for a new power plant. And you justify that approval in large part by pointing back to the previous two steps. You say, look, Public Service Commission, we created this plan that looked out 20 years and figured out what's the best type of power plant to build. Then we asked developers to submit bids to build that type of power plant. Now you should give us approval. That's the general process that is followed. And so we are here at the beginning, and it's important that this plan is accurate and that the commission, if there are shortfalls, which we think there are many, the commission knows about those. We're going to get to those in a second here. But that's how this plan kind of fits in here. It's worth noting, there it is, down the right. That's the front cover. It's worth noting that it's a plan, but it isn't required that the company or the commission follow it exactly. They're not chained to it. And in this case, I think that's a good thing because, as we'll get to, there's a lot of flaws and it's trying to take us down the wrong path for climate change. But it's true that, you know, just because the plan calls for a bunch of gas plants, that is not necessarily the case that the commission has to approve gas plants or that the company has to only propose gas plants. The plan is an exercise to, again, look out into the future, figure out what your options are, identify risks that you might face, and then use it to inform decisions in the future, but you're not chained to the plan. We've got a link up here. You can get to the full plan. It's about 300 pages long, just volume 1. Volume 2 is probably a few hundred more pages. It is quite long and dense. It's worth noting, though, if you do check it out, you know, it reads like a technical document, kind of reads like it was created by a bunch of engineers and accountants, but you do have to remember that the company has a profit motive and that the plan, I would argue, is not unbiased. That the company, and utilities all around the country do this, they often see these plans as a way to advance their business model and their business goals, not necessarily get the best outcomes for ratepayers. And so you have to be a little skeptical when you're reading it. We'll get into why, because what is in the plan? What is in this thing? Here's the top lines. It calls for keeping all of the current power plants that they run remaining in operation and running as is. That's a big problem when we get to Colstrip. We'll touch on that in a second. Middle point here on the top, for new power plants, it only calls for building fracked gas power plants. Say fracked gas, sometimes you may have heard the term natural gas. I'm not sure why it's called natural gas. I'm not sure what unnatural gas would be. That seems a little odd. But so much gas in this country now is being produced through the fracking process, and it seems a little more apt to make sure that people know that it's resulting from that. Only frack gas plants. It calls for a new gas plant every year from 2022 to 2025. So 4 in a row, about 200 megawatts each year. So about 800 megawatts total, and about $200 million for each of these plants. So you're looking at least 800 million just to build them, likely a lot more, and then you have to operate them and all of those costs. That's what it calls for new power plants. It calls for no new wind, no new solar, no new battery storage. And I didn't put it on there, but it has a very little role for energy efficiency. They actually decreased their goals for energy efficiency from the previous plan. Yeah. And then, a big problem as well, bottom here, this thing assumes that the Colstrip power plant is going to run for the next 20 years or more. Now remember, NorthWestern owns a 30% share of Unit 4 of Colstrip. It's about 220 megawatts. There are other utilities that own that facility, and all of those other utilities are looking to get out of it in the next 5 to 10 years. And meanwhile, in this plan, NorthWestern assumes that plant's going to run for 20 years. We'll get into why that's a problem in a second. They didn't analyze the cost of what if we went away from Colstrip, what if we stopped running that plant and used something else, any other type of power plant, would we save money? This is the kind of analysis that other utilities have been doing with their coal plants, and NorthWestern didn't do it here. They also didn't mention the environmental cleanup costs. So 300 pages, all of this analysis, we know that those costs are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars to clean up the site out at Colstrip. And currently, from the best we can tell, NorthWestern is not collecting any money to pay for that cleanup. But that is a cost that is going to be incurred. Someone is going to have to pay for that. And it's a fact that the longer the facility runs, the more that cleanup cost is going to be. So not only did they not compare Colstrip to other types of power plants, but they don't mention that, oh, by the way, while we're running this thing, we're racking up a bill that is going to be who knows how many millions in cleanup costs. Those are some of the top lines. People have been asking, this plan has been out for a little while, and when talking to people, they say, I've read it, read the executive summary, I'm not sure what exactly they're asking for. Where does it say that they're asking for only new gas plants? There's a couple of places. This is one of them, page 1-12. Might be hard to see, but basically the blue bars are new power plants. And you got years along the bottom, 2022 to 2025, about 200 each year. And the description notes that the portfolios identify resources, known costs, and indicate that thermal resources provide the best value, lowest cost to meet our customers' future need for peak capacity. That thermal resource there is your indicator. Thermal means gas. So thermal is a code word for it. You burn gas at a gas plant, and that creates heat, which boils water, and the steam turns a turbine. There's a thermal process taking place there. And that's why they're referring to it as thermal here. Now, in other places, they just straight up refer to it as natural gas, but I like to pair it with this chart because you can see the new plants coming online. So they're only looking for new gas plants. Why is that a problem? Well, first off, frack gas is a problem. It's a climate risk. We have to remember that even though gas burning plants, they produce a little less carbon dioxide than coal plants, it's about 40 to 60% of a coal plant. So it's not zero. It's actually quite a bit. And it produces methane. So when you extract gas from the ground, and you got to extract it out of the ground, put it in the pipelines, send it through the pipelines, get it to the power plant, there are leakages throughout that entire process. And the more that scientists look, the more leaks they're finding, where just straight methane is going into the atmosphere. And methane, CH4, is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. It's 80 times more potent greenhouse gas over the first 20 years of its life in the atmosphere compared to CO2. And of course, fracking has its own environmental problems as well. So gas is a climate risk. Gas is also a ratepayer risk. Gas is a fuel, and you have to get that fuel, and you have to pay a price for it, and it's affected by what is the market rate for that fuel at a given time. Basically, the price of gas can spike. The price of gas can increase in the future. This is a big economic risk for consumers, that this gas price can spike. And the little chart here at the bottom, this is from what's called the Henry Hub. It's a place in the US where gas is traded, and the price at that hub is often seen as a benchmark for gas prices all around the country. And this is from 2002 to 2014. You don't really need to know the numbers, except that right here, you see a couple of big spikes. You're going from $6 per unit up to past 12 a couple of times. You had the price of gas jump 100% twice in just a couple of years. If you are heavily invested in gas plants at that time, you're going to be paying a whole lot more, because you got to buy the gas, and you're going to be buying it at market prices. Gas prices have been low as of recent, mostly due to fracking, but there's more and more indicators that that is not going to continue for very long in the future. So gas, the fuel price, is certainly a ratepayer risk. Gas is also a ratepayer risk. There's a big cost involved with building a gas plant. And in particular, you have to have a pipeline that delivers gas to the plant. And NorthWestern has said in the past that its current gas pipelines are essentially full. They don't have any more space to send gas through the pipelines. So if they're going to build new gas plants, they're going to have to build new pipelines. And the plan did not include the costs of these pipelines, which we know they're going to have to build, when estimating the cost for gas. I use this quote a lot. This is from the company's 2013 resource plan, 2013 version of this. They said, quote, "The natural gas pipelines that serve NorthWestern service territory are near full capacity, and that installation of significant new natural gas-fired generation anywhere in the NorthWestern service territory will likely require pipeline capacity upgrades or interruptible pipeline service with diesel fuel backup," burning diesel when they can't get enough gas through the pipelines. That's even worse. So the company has said, we're going to need new pipelines to do a bunch of new gas plants, and they left that cost out of the plan. And actually, let's get through these real quick, and then we just got a couple more here, and then we'll do Q&A. So a possible comment folks could think about is that the plan should have included the costs of gas pipelines when estimating the cost of the gas plants. We'll talk about Colstrip now. Why is Colstrip a problem in this plan and in this process? Again, the plan is truly just blind to Colstrip. It's a 300-page volume 1. There are 2 paragraphs talking about the future of Colstrip. And both of them just say in vague terms that the plant provides a lot of value to NorthWestern customers, and that it couldn't possibly be cost-effective to take it offline in the next 20 years. It's truly brazen, the way that they just do not acknowledge that there are risks that facility is going to go offline. There's a ratepayer risk involved here. We've got the costs of different power plants for NorthWestern customers here in the graph. This comes from a state government agency, the Montana Consumer Council. They produced it using NorthWestern's filings. On the far right in the red, we've got the Colstrip power plant. $74 a megawatt hour is how much it effectively costs NorthWestern customers to get energy from Colstrip. You go to the left, the blue is, that's the hydro dams, $58. Go to the left again, Judith Gap Wind Facility, $31 a megawatt hour. Far less than Colstrip. Far left, the lowest green, the South Peak Wind Project, that's a contracted price. The facility is under construction now at $22 a megawatt hour. That's going to be east of Great Falls, about an hour, $22 compared to the Colstrip 74. But the plan did not compare the cost of Colstrip and running it compared to other options. Other big risk, again, that the facility, all signs are pointing that the facility is going to close sometime in the next 6 years, 5 years, maybe a lot sooner. We will see. There's new information coming out every day. I've got here, again, I apologize, this might be a little small for folks, but basically there are 4 other owners of Unit 4, and it has the dates that everyone else is looking to get out, either because they're required to by state law, or they've done their own modeling of should we keep running this facility or should we switch to something else. PacifiCorp did that. They found we should get out by 2027 to save our customers money. Everybody else is 2025, 2025, 2027, and 2030. And right now, NorthWestern's version of this story goes that Colstrip isn't going to close until 2042, if not further. Okay. So that's a big ratepayer risk. And again, a possible comment, the plan should have modeled what would happen if Colstrip goes offline and what would the costs and benefits be of replacing it with other sources such as wind and solar and battery storage and energy efficiency. So those are a couple. We're going to do some Q&A now, and give me a time check on that as well. But and McKenna and Roxa are going to go over the commission and the commenting process. And then we're going to go through that. We've got the talking points and the handouts on the clipboards around the room. And folks on the phone, you should have received those via email. We've got more over here that we'll go over some of the talking points as well. But we'll do some Q&A here. Just
I might want to start with the chat box.
oh, let's take
I
that.
have quite a few.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
so,
good,
so
good.
I don't see
Huh?
any. Is there any new ones? Yeah, we're good there. Any questions? No.
Okay. Good question.
I had heard that the peaking plant, the gas peaking plant, was built on a gas line that didn't have adequate capacity.
Yeah. The question was about the Dave Gates generating station gas plant near Anaconda, and pointing out that when they built it, they did not have enough gas pipeline capacity to serve that facility. That is true. And that's where the diesel backup comes in. They have diesel backup that they occasionally use. I'm not sure how often, but they occasionally use at that facility. Yeah. John.
Brian, do they have to do like a checklist to impact statement or anything that's associated with it?
The question was, is a environmental impact analysis, does that have to be done as part of the plan, like a MEPA or a NEPA? No, not for the plan. The plan is created via a process right now where NorthWestern has an advisory committee called the Energy and Technical Advisory Committee, ETAC. I do sit on it. We met almost monthly for almost 2 years, where the company would come in and present some information, and us and others would give them feedback and provide them with information. And that's sort of currently the main process by which it's created. Now, we gave them a whole bunch of feedback about what should be the cost of wind and solar and batteries, and that you should model Colstrip going offline. They ignored it, and it's really unfortunate.
Two chat comments. Just read them in.
Okay.
If the plan doesn't analyze going offline, I assume it doesn't analyze how the owners who bail out sooner will share the environmental cleanup costs.
No, it does not. It doesn't mention about how much will, so yeah, NorthWestern will pay a share of the cleanup costs with the other owners. But the plan doesn't calculate what's an estimate of those costs and how much might NorthWestern have to pay. And it doesn't include that.
The second question, has anyone in the scientific community challenged NorthWestern Energy's plan in the future or in the past or plan to challenge it in the future?
If scientific community means like kind of environmental sciences, climate sciences, I haven't seen that, not for the last couple of plans. But there, right now, the commission is taking public comment, and folks, everyday folks will be commenting, but usually, like renewable energy developers have sometimes hired experts to review the plan and submit comments as well, or we'll be doing that with our own internal expertise. Other organizations that have sort of internal expertise about different pieces of the plan will be reviewing it and providing comments. So, but if there is somebody in the scientific community that wanted to take a look at it, absolutely. And the whole reason we're here is to get public comment to the commission. I think the commissioners listen to their staff quite a bit. And I think the commission staff, who are excellent, are fully capable of taking in public comment like that and figuring out how to advise the commission on what to do. And we'll do just maybe one more and just bump into and we will all be around for additional questions after the formal part of the evening as well. But Mark, yeah.
So if they're in the future, within the next 20 years, there's a price on carbon. Does that tax cost to get passed directly to consumers?
If a carbon tax was enacted, then yes, it would. Let's say a new gas plant gets built, it still produces carbon, and there's some dollar per ton carbon tax, either federal or state. Yeah, that would get put onto ratepayers, absolutely. And that's a risk as well for ratepayers. And it has been a significant one in the past, that some form of regulation would come forward on carbon emissions and increase the cost of any power plant that produces carbon emissions. Ratepayers would have to pay that. Yeah. We'll stop there. We'll jump into McKenna and Roxa, and we'll be around again for questions at the end as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian, so much. That was good info for sure. How do I move forward on this? There we go. Okay. All right. So again, I'm McKenna. I am a staff for Northern Plains Resource Council.
I'm Roxa Reller. I live here in Helena, and we're a rooftop and ground-mounted residential solar energy producer.
So our part of this presentation is to give a little bit of a crash course 101 about what the Public Service Commission is, their structure, and what our experience has looked like this year testifying before these guys, which we have done quite a lot of through Northern Plains and through our local affiliate here in Helena before the PSC on clean energy throughout this year.
So as McKenna mentioned, we is Northern Plains Resource Council. It's an organization based in Billings that is a grassroots conservation and family agriculture group. We've been around for about 47 years. So since 1972, we've been helping Montana citizens organize to protect water quality, family farms and ranches, and our unique way of life and our quality of life. Our mission is to protect Montana's greatest assets, the quality of our natural resources, the character and viability of family-based agriculture, and the ability of citizens to shape the public policies that affect our land, our water, and our lives, so that we can pass them on unimpaired to future generations. And it's this last part of impacting policy that's an important reason why we're here today. So we believe in the power of everyday Montanans shape the policies that impact our lives, and especially the policies that shape our landscape, our energy landscape, and our energy future. Northern Plains has 13 local affiliates around the state. Our members work a lot on bringing more conversation about energy efficiency and renewable energy to our legislature in the form of citizen lobbying for good bills at the legislature, as well as raising money for solar panels and community solar projects. This year, we've spent a lot of our time organizing at the Montana Public Service Commission, where we recently had a big win, thanks to you and members all across the state, AERO, to prevent unfair costs for residential rooftop solar. So thank you, yay.
Yeah. And so the image that you're seeing on the slide here, so we do a lot of citizen lobbying at the legislature, so talking with representatives and senators about certain bills we'd like to pass on energy efficiency. But this year we have done a lot more getting involved in the Public Service Commission, which is not the same thing as citizen lobbying. It's slightly different, which we'll get into, but nevertheless, very important in the whole process of affecting the decisions that impact our lives, especially when it comes to energy. So that's where those pictures are from. So the who, what of the PSC, the Public Service Commission, as Brian sort of talked about in his intro to NorthWestern Energy's plan. So NorthWestern Energy is a monopoly utility, and so that means that they get access to whatever parts of their territory in this state, and their trade-off is being regulated by a Montana entity. So that entity is the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission has its roots actually dating back to 1907, when the state of Montana decided that it was time to regulate railroads, making them safer, reliable, and reasonable cost for consumers. And so since then, the Public Service Commission has evolved to be an elected body, 5 members that are split up to represent different districts, and they also cover a number of different types of utilities, telecommunications, pipelines in some cases, electricity, investor-owned utilities is like what we're seeing right now, talking about NorthWestern. Seems to be the most popular for us, at least right now. We don't track a ton on the telecommunications front. But just so y'all know, the Public Service Commission, this is just one piece of their overall regulatory oversight that they do for a number of different companies. So on this map, you can see that there are 5 different districts that each Public Service Commissioner represents. And so there's really 2 levels to what the Public Service Commission is. There's the 5 elected commissioners, which are partisan. They serve 4-year terms and they are staggered. So every 2 years, there are a set of districts up for re-election. But the other half of that is the team of dedicated expert staff in regulatory, administrative, and legal services, I think are the 3 categories of staff at the Public Service Commission. The elected commissioners listen a lot to their staff because their staff are putting in numerous hours. It's a larger team, and they have the expertise to handle some of the regulatory oversight that maybe the legislature doesn't. So on this next slide, you can see who those people are. District 1, we have Commissioner Pinocci. District 2, Tony O'Donnell. District 3, Roger Koopman. District 4, Commissioner Bob Lake. And District 5, which is where we all are at right now in person here in Helena, Brad Johnson. Another thing that is just important to know about like the differences of what the Public Service Commission is versus lobbying on a bill at the legislature. The Public Service Commission is supposed to follow the law, whereas the legislature actually creates those laws. So in a sense, they're supposed to act more like a judge and not have any biases, which, I mean, in reality, there's a lot of nuance to that. That's a challenge for not only citizens to understand, but even the commissioners themselves. So That all being said, it's still important to get to know these people because they are the decision makers and they are supposed to be the ratepayers' first line of defense for safe, reliable, and reasonably priced energy.
Okay, so the Public Service Commission is quasi-judicial. What does that mean? It actually refers to a judicial act performed by an official who's not a judge. I looked that up online. So, so you can't lobby them like a legislature or your county commissioner, but you can take steps to pressure these public decision makers who are serving in the public interest to meet your demands or what we want. For example, you could hold a rally, you could give testimony at a public hearing, you can also provide written comments so that the commissioners and the staff hear from you. And these layers of citizen visibility make change happen.
Yeah, amen to that one. Okay, so we're going to pivot now to thinking about how you as an individual might be able to give public comment at the Public Service Commission. We use this simple, just 3-part structure for giving public comment. So if you would like to use it, you are more than welcome to once we break out into our exercise. So generally, we will start with your name. You know, if you're walking up to a microphone, you say, hello, my name is McKenna Sellers. I live in Helena, Montana. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. Asterisk, you could say what organization you're affiliated with, but you're not obligated to do so. You could just come as a citizen too.
So why is NorthWestern's 20-year plan important to you? That's important to convey in your personal story that makes the issue more real. Here's some examples that I picked off the internet and that kind of drummed up. NorthWestern's 20-year plan is darker than we thought. Might be something you could start with. Please protect Montana ratepayers from the uncontested decisions of our monopoly utility. These are examples that you could just spin off from. As a NorthWestern ratepayer, renewable energy and storage is the future I want for Montana's children and for those who will inherit the outcomes of the energy decisions we make today. Please request that NorthWestern Energy model cost effectiveness and show their work for all their generating assets to determine if Montana residential customers are getting a fair shake. Remember, it's direct public pressure, not just persuasion on decision makers.
Totally. And then you can get into some of the content. So going back to point number 2, your story, whether it's you're looking out for your grandkids as we face a climate crisis, or you might have rooftop solar, or you're interested in getting rooftop solar, or you just generally care about a clean energy future in Montana. Your values, when you bring them to the Public Service Commission, those values are important and they don't have to be technical. It's helpful that we have these trainings and get a better understanding, but by no means should you be barred from giving public comment because you bring a value system to a decision maker. They need to hear that, most definitely. So part 3, so you've given your name, you might give your story or why this 20-year plan is important to you. Then you can go into maybe a couple, pick 2 or 3 content issues that you have with the 20-year plan. But overall for the December 9th public comment, which I imagine there are going to be a number of people, and just as a rule of thumb, keeping your testimony under 5 minutes will maintain the commissioner's attention and the attention of the audience without totally losing them. So keeping in that 5-minute ballpark is just a general helpful point.
Is there a time clock?
I haven't heard of a time clock that the Public Service Commission will be, it didn't sound like they would have a timekeeper.
Does the chairman do like they do in committees where they ask how many proponents, opponents, and divide the number by how many minutes they want to divide it by?
Right. So there was a question in the audience of how the Public Service Commission will divvy up time at the public hearing, and they haven't told us. So we'll probably find out when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what it looks like when you're standing in the back of the commissioner's room where you'll be giving testimony. The commissioners will sit behind a desk at one end of the room, and you'll be seated, at least we were earlier, at a microphone. So you'll begin by addressing the commissioners, and I can't say enough about having your testimony written, including your name. Again, speaking for personal experience, that might not apply to everyone, but I can also say that the testimony, from what I can tell, is not recorded, but it is live streamed. So remember that there is a camera in the back of the room recording you as you walk up and sit down, and others as they move around through the room. It's helpful, just as it is tonight, to let people know in the room how many other people are there. So there's 15 other people here in the room tonight that you can watch the live stream commissioner testimony at home, but you may not know how many people are there and who's coming and who's going. So for me, it was also helpful having someone help me write background information. That background information was really, really essential. Practice speaking it, maybe sing it out loud. Time it, make it less than 3 minutes ideally, but less than 5 minutes. Bring your glasses. Assume that a microphone is always on. Consider handing in your written comments after you've finished, if they're ready and in a format. That would be something to consider. And finally, have fun. I have a hard time with this, so it's really helpful to me, because I get nervous up there, when somebody helps me out with a little bit of a joke. And this is my personal opinion. If you poke fun at NorthWestern Energy, that's okay. But it's probably not a good idea to poke fun at the commissioners. So I had help with this comment a week ago about the solar ratepayer that was rate paying, and that NorthWestern Energy didn't show their work. And there was a lot of comments about how can we consider these additional rates for rooftop solar when NorthWestern applied a model that even the Public Service Commission staff didn't have answers to. And so what helped me was this statement: even elementary school math teachers tell their students, you won't get credit unless you show your work. And I really relaxed a little bit when I heard some snickers in the room. So if you have just a little bit of that in your personality, that can help as well. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And Rox is a seasoned person giving public comment. She's had lots of practice at this. So thank you for sharing some of your experiences of good tips and tricks. Okay, so at this point, we will open it up for questions if there's time. Otherwise, we can pass along to Lindsay to facilitate our exercise. Do we have questions? Go ahead.
Is there a preferred respectful way to address the commissioners? Like when you're in, well, it's different for whatever group you're addressing.
Right. Okay. The question was, is there an appropriate way to address the commissioners? I think just calling them commissioners, like good morning commissioners or good afternoon commissioners, is a very polite way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Is the whole afternoon open for comment? It sounds like there'll be a lot of people coming. How much time total is allowed by the commission?
Sure. So specifics on December 9th, the question was, will we be there all afternoon? How many hours have they allocated? And they didn't make it explicit how many hours they will devote to this, but based on, so the PSC made an announcement saying they would hold 2 public comment sessions on this coming Monday, December 9th, on this 20-year plan. One begins at 1:30 and the other begins at 5. I could totally see them being there all day, and maybe those public comments will mush together and we will be running for multiple hours. But we don't know until we get the count of how many people are there. So it's totally on them to organize and make sure that people are in the right place and heard. Yeah.
I think there was a suggestion that there's going to be a meeting at the committee prior to the commission meeting. Is that still on?
Right. Okay. The question was, is there going to be a prep session? So actually, some of our friends at 350 Montana have scheduled a rally in front of the Public Service Commission. So we've opted to go for that. And then if anyone has questions on prepping testimony or if they have questions on other details to expect, feel free to reach out to Lindsay, myself, or Brian to get that all figured out. Okay, one more.
The commissioners do not appear to be advocates of or big believers in the idea of climate change and its impact.
Mm-hmm.
So it would seem that our argument should be more focused on economics.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Okay. I think there's strategy to any particular public comment. You know, some folks feel real passionate about climate change, and if that's where your value base is, don't feel afraid to share that just because a commissioner may or may not have the same beliefs. But I do agree with you that economics is sometimes a more persuasive route to take when giving public comment. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to follow, will the commissioners ask you questions in return?
Anyone know? The question was, after giving public comment, will the commissioners go back and ask you questions in return? This is something that is pretty common in the legislature during the legislative session. I've never seen it. Has anyone else ever seen that?
I would say it's possible that while you're sitting there, one of them might ask you a quick question, but it will be rare. And it's not like the legislature where, you know, if you give comment, then you have to wait around the room, and then the commissioners will like have a chance to ask questions of anyone who commented. It won't be like that. So if they're going to ask you a question, it'll be while you're sitting at the microphone.
Okay, we're running a little shy on time. Is it possible we can answer the questions once we break out? Okay, we'll do that. Thanks.
All right, excellent. So we'll just take some time now to pair up. I'm not sure that the time that's written out on the 20-minute practice will be as much time as we take. But the outline that Roxa and McKenna gave us is here numbered. So this is the structure that they suggested in writing your comment. And we're just suggesting you pair up, you take a few minutes to write your comment, and then you practice out loud with one another. We'll probably just take 15 minutes for this because I know there's more questions, and we really want to talk about what's going to happen on Monday, December 9th, and give you all that information. So with that, we'll just go to breakouts, and I'll let you know when it's been about 5 minutes so you can start practicing with one another.
I hope that practice time was useful for people. And again, if you do have any questions, especially those online who might have questions or need help with their prepping their comment, please reach out to Brian, myself, or Lindsay, and we're happy to walk through some of those things and help in whatever way we can. Okay, so up here on the screen is a game plan overview of what December 9th looks like at the Public Service Commission. So as I said before, 350 Montana is hosting a rally. I think they're calling it like leading Montana taking the lead, or Montana's clean energy future, how we take the lead. And I don't know exactly who's going to be speaking at that yet, but it'll be a number of people in the conservation world, people who would like to run for the Public Service Commission, and those who really care about a clean energy future and a transition towards that. So noon, it's outside, so bring your signs, bring warm weather, clothes. Then at 1:30,
Is
so
this at the PSC office?
Yep, it'll be at the Public Service Commission building in the sidewalk parking lot area, right. So then the public hearing begins at 1:30. This is the public hearing in the afternoon that we have been driving our turnout towards to really make a big splash here. So if you can make it to the 1:30, please join us in making that turnout really huge and really powerful. So that's at the Public Service Commission building again. That's 1701 Prospect Avenue. And when you walk into the building, either one of us might see you and show you where to go to get to the Bollinger Room, which is their hearing chambers, or one of the Public Service Commission staff is going to probably be around to help. I can definitely imagine that happening. Join the Ratepayer Rebellion Facebook event or the Ratepayer Rebellion Facebook page to get more information and updates as they come. And so that's called, the official Facebook event is called Ratepayer Rebellion at the PSC, if you are looking for that event there. just as an additional option, if anyone would like to give public comment later in the afternoon because they can't make it at 1:30, there is in person a second public hearing starting at 5 p.m. at the Public Service Commission on Monday the 9th. So if you're interested in carpools, if you happen to be coming from Billings, Missoula, Bozeman, or circa those areas, a van will depart from Billings at 7 a.m. And if you're interested in that, please RSVP to our Northern Plains staff in Billings, Sydney Austin. If you're interested in Missoula, they're taking off at 9 o'clock and bus departs from Bozeman at 11:15. It is my understanding that all of these buses will be participating in the rally, then going to the 1:30 hearing and leaving after the 1:30 hearing. So they would not stick around for the 5 o'clock.
Are they free?
They are free, yep, and you don't have to be a member of any organization to get on them, but please RSVP so that we have a sense of the numbers, no cost to you. So recommendations as far as if you're coming to Helena, pack warm clothes for the rally, bring your signs, and I don't really know if there's a plan for lunch. There's a lot of different conservation groups that are getting involved in this, so probably pack a lunch. That's what I would recommend. I think that would be the smartest choice.
For folks that were interested in meeting at noon to write their comment, where should they just email one of us to work on comment, or what's the best route for folks who want more support?
Sure. So the question there, maybe you heard Lindsay, but I can't tell, she's a little far away from the computer. For those who were hoping to prep at noon, but instead we have this rally replacing it, what can they do to prep comments? Between now and Monday, I have carved out a lot of time to be helpful just at a one-on-one level. So email or call to either Brian Fady or myself would be great. And so I think Lindsay, in her follow-up to all the webinar attendees and in-person attendees, will pass along our information. Great.
So if in person on the sign-in sheet, you just want to make sure your email's there if you want it to follow up.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you again to everyone who joined in person and for those who joined on the web. We hope this was helpful to you.